So I did the 16 days of orange, but now I think it's time for me to sort of speak it like I said. I don't know. I think men love harder than women. Like, why I'm saying this is, I sort of grew up as someone who mends relationships. If I have a feud with family, it has to be cut. Friends, it has to be cut. But these things are 50-50. When you try as hard as you can to try and block or pull someone in the direction that you believe you can meet halfway, if they don't have that same passion, if they don't have that same drive, there is absolutely no way you can force it. And this is where it leads to conflicting emotions, because women are told by society that they are feeling beings. They feel, they cry, they laugh, they are angry, and men are supposed to be tough, don't show emotion. So that's basically the way that we grew up. But internalizing all the wrongs that are being done to you, or neglect, whatever it is, it leads to psychological abuse. If you don't meet someone halfway, then you are overworking. It's something that I was thinking about, and I thought about how an argument is not a fight. But to some people, the way they grow up, an argument is a fight. This is not a fight, a disagreement. As opposed to looking for the solution and saying, okay, this is our solution, let's find a solution. What do? They make it a fight. And when you make it a fight, it becomes volatile. And a volatile relationship will eventually, as most people think, will eventually lead to violence. But this is not true. What does lead to violence is the incapability of women to understand men's emotions. You have to ask yourself, what does a man need from me, aside from material things? He needs my care, my support, and so forth. So if you're not doing that, yet you're conflicted with a man, then you're not looking internally at the wrongs you've done. And some men who undermine women based on how they grow up, their environment. I mean, let's be honest, our society is becoming civil. It's not a mature society yet. Globally, look, Catholic priests can't be women. That is a clear testament of gender bias. And what does eventually lead to violence is that miscommunication, where most boys are taught to react in self-defense, while women confront, yet don't understand the feelings of men. Why am I saying this has more to do with men than women? Because as men, we keep getting told, you must change, you must change, you must change, you must change, you must change. The same thing is not said about women. The psychological abuse that men face is considered to be harmless, and just a woman being a woman. And a man being a man means he only thinks with his reproductive organs, which is false. Every man wants a companion, but I have come come to the conclusion that we should not overexert ourselves just because we want a companion, a partner, or try to be overly chivalristic when it comes to women. Most definitely not. Most of the men that do use violence are mostly those that have been violently confronted. If we don't put men in this story, then it's not about equal rights. Women's rights are human rights. That means they are men's rights too. But the notion that men oppress women is ridiculous and unfair. The man is always guilty, but not the woman. You hear about dangerous women. That woman is a dangerous woman, such things. Now that would be a woman who supposedly can stand up to herself, not knowing that they are mostly bullies. Just because men have bigger muscles and things doesn't mean men are overly dosed with testosterone. So if we don't have a conversation about equal rights, then trying to push for women's rights will only go to women, and that won't fix anything. If it's only women that are allowed to speak for women's rights, how on earth do you expect it to be 50-50 then? If it's not an integral method that's being used. Diplomacy, meet halfway. You know, for example, a man being a cashier means you have been stripped of your manhood now. You're not a man, you're doing a woman's job. So that's bad. It's also very easy to defame men. Like I've been defamed by just people that I don't even know claiming to be in a relationship with me, and then there's the whole he has many women thing. You know what, I've decided if that's the case, then okay, maybe I'll find someone who is of equal capacity, who wants to meet at 50 and not 100. Like, I probably should be thanking, because it means that there is a sense of competition, which is how men court women, and which is absolutely okay. There's nothing wrong with a woman courting a man. It's seen as the man's job, and that's the problem. Everything is the man's job, but raising kids, the woman's jobs. Then you will raise a kid that only knows one direction and feels that segregation is just a part of society, whereby women and men can't walk together, or where you get women being undermined or being called soft and so forth. So if it's a discussion about gender-based violence, I think it should go down to the core, the thinking, the thought process. What leads these men to beat their spouse or their partner, companion, whatever you want to call it? How can it be prevented? And in most countries, this is done by counseling. Most pastors are not qualified to counsel couples. They're not. That's why they are professionals. That option is there. Or family members who want the situation to work 50-50. But this means they must be informed. It shouldn't come as a surprise, because then it will be like, we protect ours and we protect ours. Or, I don't want my family to interfere, And whatever happens behind closed doors, nobody knows. And it becomes a cycle. I want to move out of that cycle. It's basically a cycle of pain and hurt. It's very negative. It's better to give 50%, receive nothing and move on, as opposed to trying to give 100%, which is what most men do. Men are providers and so forth and so forth. So as men compete against other men within the markets, you are seen as a failure if you cannot accommodate, let's say, your family 100%. And women are seen as victims most of the time. We hear about single mother, and there are no single fathers, because the courts always rule in the man's favor, in the woman's favor, which is also unfair. I'm on the side of men when it comes to this discussion about gender-based violence, because we're not allowed to talk about it. Even though there are good guys out there, women are attracted to trash. They go to a pathetic quack, and that's what they cling on to. And then the good guys suffer from the slack of the bad ones who mistreat women. And where does that lead? It leads to conflict. And this conflict is chosen. If you know that person is violent, like really violent, there are some people that get fed up quickly and maybe lose temper. I'm talking about violence and abuse. If that is how you know that person, be it a woman or a man, it should be treated on equal premises, because economy is a different subject apart from gender-based violence. And gender-based violence seems to put across the point that men beat or kill women just because they are women, while more men get killed by men than women get killed by men. It really is a thought process, and yeah, I think it's unfair to use the bed of society to gauge men, while we know that most men change during childhood. That's when they are taught societal norms. So it's a social issue where you want the next generation to be on equal terms based on how society views men and women. But it cannot be enforced. There is no one-way solution except maybe counseling or mediating. So it's, to me, it's a broad story, and it shouldn't be put on men only. If it's gender-based violence, then women should also be accountable, because everybody makes mistakes. And if we're not accountable for it, all of us, then there is absolutely no way you can say there will be a solution found. Yeah, I'll continue with that.